go in 1978, 79, and I go to the Menlo Park. I go with Brother Joseph Connell's teacher at Morrill High School. So I go in. We set the meeting. And you can imagine what it looks like. I'm 42 now. 22 years ago, I looked like I was 12, okay? So I go into this place, and they're expecting some hot researcher, you know, somebody distinguished, like Professor Santucci. They're not expecting some surfer with kind of long hair, turtleneck, yeah, groovy, Eckankar. So I walk into the place, and they're like, "You're the kid who's done all this research, is causing all this problem?" Yeah, I did. That's the kind of fun. So I gave them some advice, which I actually subsequently listened to. I explained to them, I said, look, just come clean. You know? So now they claim that the plagiarism is not really plagiarism, although it looks like it's copied, because on the astral plane, there's a Golden Temple library. Which souls go to. I'm not making it up. And what happens is you check out source manuscripts. So the reason Julian Johnson's Path of the Masters and The Far Country, or the Shari Kiksugman by Paul Twitchell looks similar, is because they both went to the same astral library, took the same notes, of course the same misspellings, and the same mistakes of the 1930s, the anti-Semitism, and then bring it down into the perfect plane. And that's the explanation. Now, okay. So, that's how my initiation into new religious movements started. It started essentially benign. I was trying to be phenomenology. You know, I was trying to be, you don't ask critical questions, you just bracket those things out, and you kind of do the, you know, peace, love, Bobby Sherman approach, if you remember Bobby Sherman. And so that was my approach. And, but then after this, I go, this is ridiculous. These people are covering this stuff up. Now, I understand, let's be real careful here. I understand that it's very appropriate in some stages to have the phenomenologist, because oftentimes in the 19th century, when Christian missionaries studied new religious movements, they basically just put their own doctrines in, their own theological slants. So there's kind of a fine balance. You've got to be careful. Clearly, I write polemically. I'll be the first to admit it. But the polemics are there in order to kind of incite a debate, in order to get the intellectual discussion going. Now, at this stage of the game, I got two ways to go. I can play the normal phenomenologist, or I can keep my critical edge on. So, I then go to Berkeley. I go to the Graduate Theological Union and study under Jurgensmark. And Jurgensmark got this huge grant. This all relates. You know, it's connected. He gets this huge grant to study a group called Radhaswami. Now, Radhaswami, some people say Rotten Swami. Radhaswami is a group that was founded in 1861 by a guru named Shiv Dayal Singh. Now, some of these names are going to get confusing to you, but I want to show you a pattern because I think it's very interesting. And it's also going to relate, moreover, to what's happening on the internet. It's also going to relate to the idea about critical studies of religion can elicit information versus suppress it. The argument is this. All religions, with few exceptions, have succession problems. If you look at any new religious movement, the question to ask is, how did that person get appointed? Who made this guy a guru in the first place? And I'll almost make you a 90% guarantee there's going to be some political controversy at the core of it. Let me just give you a glimpse and get myself a deep look. Think of Jesus Christ. The question that could be raised 2,000 years later is, who appointed Jesus? Now, if you happen to be an Orthodox or fundamentalist Christian, you might have a certain interpretation. God appointed him. But if you look at it from a more sociological perspective, there were a number of messiahs at the time claiming to be the Messiah. Moreover, as you remember, Jesus got baptized by who? He got baptized by John the Baptist. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but lots of followers of John the Baptist did not accept Jesus as the heir apparent. There was a succession dispute, and some people claimed that the New Testament was written in that light. Or take something a little different than that. Take the selection of the Pope today. How does the Pope get selected? God forbid the Pope dies, John Paul II dies. What do? You get a college of cardinals, get together. And they're going to vote. Do you think the vote is going to be totally like, oh, who are you going to vote for? That's good. Who are you going to vote for? Fine, no problem, no discussion. There's going to be a lot of politics. And there's going to be some people arguing for this clique, arguing for this person. We know this in the faculty departments, how rancorous it can get. You want to backstab some people. I can't stand that guy. How can that person become the chairperson? So, what I'm suggesting is, and what I've noticed is that religion is fraught with politics. And if I can quote a little Nietzsche, it's human, all too human. And that's kind of where I've grounded myself. Let me just get myself in some trouble. Okay. If that's the case, then it should be very interesting. It should be pregnant with ideas for us to look at any new religious movement and look at the question of who appointed that person the master. Because I think, and this is what I've developed as a theory, the closer you get to the founder, the more human it becomes, the more politics there are, and it's much more skirmishy. So that's what I did my doctoral dissertation on. It's essentially a book called The Radhaswami Tradition, The Politics of Guru Succession. So let's go back, and let's say, I can't draw at all, but we're going to call this India, okay? With a happy face. We got India. And the question I'm going to raise is this. We got America. The question I'm going to raise is, how do religions, 12 to 13 to 14, depending on what part of India, 1,000 miles away from India, influence religions in America? And they clearly influence them a lot, especially new religious movements. That I find interesting. Now, how did I come about this understanding, which is a very common motif in new religious studies, is when I studied this group called Eckankar. Eckankar, by the way, is actually a Hindi or a Punjabi word. The Sikhs, if you remember the Sikhs, founded by Guru Nanak in 1469, actually born in 1469. The Sikhs is a religion that many of you know when you go to 7-Elevens. With people with turbans on, long white beards. No, I'm not making it up, it's true. And so you remember, you recognize that. Well, the Sikh religion, actually should pronounce Sikh, which means disciple or follower, was founded by a guru named Nanak. Guru Nanak had 9 successors all the way to Guru Arjan, to the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, who apparently died in 1708. Don't worry about it. What you want to know is something really weird. Here's a new religious movement that's called Eckankar. But if I find out that the word actually is not Tibetan, which Paul Twitchell claimed, it turns out to be a very common word in India. If you know anything about Hindi, ek, do, teen, char, panch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ek means one. Ankar means God. One God. Now, most followers of Eckankar have no clue that the word is extremely common. In fact, it's the very first word of Guru Nanak's Japji in the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the holy scriptures of the Sikh religion. It talks about this one God. Ekankar Satam Siriwa Guru. Therefore, I said to myself, this looks like an American-based religion, taking some Indian terms, some Chinese terms. But Twitchell wanted to genealogically disassociate it from its Indian past. This is a very common phenomenon. We did it, some of you did it, when you're 12 or 13 or 14 years old. You start to grow up, you turn to teenage years with your mom and dad. You're going down the mall, what happens? You're walking about 10 steps behind. Oh, I'm not with them. No. Who are they? They're not me. Teenagers try to do this because they have a sense of their own autonomy. New religions, not all, some of the ones I've studied, do exactly the same thing. Therefore, studying Eckankar, I said, my God, I better study the roots of some of these religions. So there's groups like, not only Eckankar, but a group that you're going to study in a couple weeks, the Movement for Spiritual Inner Awareness, founded by John Roger Hinkins. John Roger Hinkins used to be a member of Eckankar. John Roger Hinkins claims the mystical travel of consciousness came to him from Sawan Singh. Sawan Singh happened to be from India. But lots of people don't know that. Not only that, the Divine Light Mission. People have heard about the boy guru, who was very famous in the 70s. There's a guy named Jerry Mulvin. He used to be a pro bowler, and now he claims to be an enlightened being. I won't get into details here, but I will tell you a little story. I got to go into a couple segues here. Jerry Mulvin I met in 1978. He was going, I need my bowling game improved. And so what happened was, in 1978, he was a member of Eckankar. He reads the term paper of the Making of a Spiritual Movement. He says, Dave, come meet me. He was a 6th initiate. I go to visit him. I think he was living with his girlfriend's aunt's house at the time. He wasn't doing very good on the pro bowling tour. And so I'm talking to Jerry. I go, Jerry. And he goes, Dave, all this stuff you found out about Eckankar, they sound like Eckankar's kind of fragile. Maybe I shouldn't follow this group. And I said, whatever, you know. It's ironic. He looked at me, he goes, Dave, with all this information, you can start your own cult. You can start your own religion. I go, Jerry, you can't do that. It's unethical. 2 years later, I get a letter from a guy in Canada. He goes, Dave, I've been searching for the perfect master, the true spiritual, enlightened being. I found him. I go, okay, who is it? His name? Jerry Mulvin. Well, Jerry Mulvin was living at his aunt's, girlfriend's house. How did he become the master? So I write him a letter. I go, Jerry, last time I knew you were, working on the pro bowling tour. And he goes, no, I became enlightened, and I am an enlightened being. Signed, the master. That's how he signed the letter. Now, apparently, you can't take your soul back to God. You can improve your bowling game by 10 points. No. So what happens is, now this funny thing about Jerry Mulvin, and I just want to sidelight this, is that oftentimes gurus are very human. Jerry Mulvin last year was arrested on pedophile charges for having child pornography on his internet. Apparently, his computer, you might have heard about this, it was in Arizona. It turned out that Jerry, he was thinking about something more than bowling. What happened was his computer malfunctioned, so he asked somebody to clean up his computer, fix it up. And the guy tries to fix it up, and he sees all these files that apparently have kids that are underage. So the Prescott, Arizona, in which he was living, came up with this huge article. Guy claims to be spiritual master, turns out to have a lot of pedophile stuff on his internet. Now Jerry lately has been in seclusion. Got to be careful. The reason I raise that up is not only to dump on Jerry Mulvin, but really to raise the issue about all religions. We seem to have this tendency that we don't want to see its humanity. We don't want to see its humanness. We don't want to see its divinity. Each follower of any religion, doesn't matter what it is. I happen to be Roman Catholic, and I have association with the Guru named Transi. Everybody has a tendency to want to embellish the life story of their particular religion. And the objective person always sees the skeletons in the closet, things we generally don't want to see. Right. Now, okay, so I'm studying Eckankar, I do my little paper, I then go to India, I go to GTU, I do my little master's thesis. But guess what happens? I find out that Paul Twitchell, the founder of this group, remember he was a follower of not only Theosophy and SRF, but he was a follower of a guru named Kirpal Singh. Now Kirpal Singh was a founder of a group called, it's going to get a little confusing, but don't worry about it. He was a founder of a group called Ruhani Satsang in 1948. But Ruhani Satsang was an offshoot of a group called Radhaswami Satsang Vyas. But Radhaswami Satsang Vyas was an offshoot of a group called Radhaswami Agra, which was founded in 1861 by Shiv Dayal Singh. I'll show you how confusing it gets. I want to get you confused consciously, because then you'll get a taste of this. Shiv Dayal Singh is a guy who claims to be an enlightened being. We'll talk about his guru in a second. He dies in 1878, but he doesn't even leave any clear succession. So you have 6 people that rise up: Sanmukh Das, Radhaji, Garib Das, Jaimal Singh, Vaisagam, and Pratap Singh. Now you can imagine, 6 guys claim to be the guru. After those 6 gurus die, it's almost like a commercial, and so on, and so on, and so on. It exponentially, like a hologram, keeps dividing itself up. So what happens? You get a group like Swamibad, Dayalbad, People Money, all within Agra. You then go to Vyas. You have how many different gurus? Today, how many different offshoots? Just from this one guru, can you imagine there are? Hundreds. We can't track them all. My job to go to India was to track the genealogical roots to this stuff. Jurgensmeyer wrote a book called Radhaswami Reality, Princeton University Press in 1991. My job was to do this genealogical tree to see where all these gurus branch off. Finally, I said, I got to stop, because I became an expert. It's like baseball cards. I became like an expert. all right, ask me anything you want. Swami Bhag's third guru, Maharaj stuff. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. What happened was like baseball cards, and eventually it became very clear to me. This is a very interesting pattern. This happens to all religions in some degree. Think of Christianity. How many different denominations are there? And how many are sprouting up? Think of all the UFO cults we've got sprouting up. So I became very interested in how this spreads out, but more interested in how it changes form, how it evolves.